I like to say Turning Point USA actually found me via a QR code on my windshield in the same high school parking lot that Charlie Kirk had parked in the suburbs of Chicago. So I definitely value that connection there. I started immediately a chapter at his high school once I had figured out what Turning Point was about and who Charlie Kirk was. And they were not fans of him there. They were not fans of the Turning Point chapter I was starting, but I was determined to make that happen. And I was given endless opportunities throughout the community, throughout the city. I was able to speak in front of hundreds of people. And finally, I was able to meet Charlie just several months after I had established that chapter at his high school. And that was a remarkable experience. I know he was so happy to hear that we had finally brought his movement to his old high school and back to his old community. I think that really touched him. But it was so honorable for me to be able to be that person. I remember just feeling so like a light on that campus, on that high school campus, because we really lacked conservative leaders. And I think that Charlie saw that in me to bring back to where he had first had his roots.
Yeah. I want you all to just briefly say, for people who don't know, and part of what we've tried to do here since he was killed is explain to people who didn't understand why he had so much appeal to people, particularly young people. Why was he special? What was significant, special about him as a person and as an inspirational leader? Sidonia.
I think something exceedingly special about Charlie was his capacity for patience. No, never did he sit at one of those prove me wrong tables and yell at people or speak over them or get angry or cuss. He sat back and he took the blows and he took the incompetence and the ridiculousness, and he came back with facts and he came back with statistics, and his capacity to just sit there and listen was remarkable. And then if someone threw an insult at him or called him a Nazi or a racist or any other ridiculous name, he just said, okay, God bless you. Thank you. Have a great day. And that to me is special about Charlie.
Theo, you also had a chance to meet him. Love to hear about that. And again, same question I asked Sidonia. What do you think history should record was special about Charlie Kirk as a leader and as a person?
Yeah, so I got to meet him actually this summer at the Chapter Leadership Summit down in Tampa, Florida. That was awesome. I'd seen Charlie on all over TikTok, Instagram, all those different things. And that was my first chance to actually encounter him in person, have a chance to sit down, see that he's just a normal human, like us. Great guy. That was very great to just be able to sit down and talk with him. But I think the big thing that really inspired our generation is that all of us had thought this stuff. We all knew it to be true. Mm-hmm. Charlie came out and said it with such conviction and made it make so much sense that you couldn't sit there and look and go, we're going to let this happen any longer. Charlie was that voice for all of us who had thought all these things. And Charlie came out and he said, you know what? We're losing the young voters. They're going largely very far left. And people were afraid to stand up. The BLM movement was huge when I was in high school. And that was a thing if you're a conservative, you're a racist. And Charlie was one to stand up, and he challenged that narrative. He didn't care what people thought of him. And he was truly just that voice for all of us that said the things that we were all thinking, but did it in just such an educated manner that we could all get behind it and say, you know what? This is a guy we're behind. This is the voice for us. And he really was a major, major inspiration to our generation in standing up for what we believe in. And then he brought faith into it all. Faith was getting pushed out of conservative politics. Charlie wasn't afraid to go there. Charlie brought that back into the conservative party at an amazing time. There's been a huge swing back in young kids to the church that Charlie's largely responsible for. And it's made the conservative party better. It hasn't made 1000%. Us more permissive, but it has made us more accepting of people. And in this way that everyone is starting to see the conservative movement as a place of unity, not as a place of hostility, which the left has become. And Charlie is largely responsible for that.
Emma, 20 years or so from now, when Charlie's kids are about your age and they asked you, why was our dad so inspirational to you? What would you say?
Yeah, well, I really like how Theo had put it. Charlie Kirk was just a normal guy. He was just one of us. And I think that's something very particular about him that made him stand out, especially to a younger generation of people like ourselves who, can look at politicians or can look at other political pundits and say, well, I don't have really that much in relation to them. And I personally think with my upbringing at the same high school as Charlie, that gave me that insight even deeper. And I think that that difference between Charlie and his ability to so clearly articulate and his extensive knowledge really helped him be that person in the conservative movement. And I know that Charlie had this grand idea of using social media, for example, as one of his sources to reaching the young demographic, which of course young people are constantly on social media. And I think that was the best tool that he had utilized because of course there is bad to social media, but what the devil intends for evil, God will use for good. And I think this is an example of that happening. So I would tell his daughter and his son that's, he was a unique, remarkable individual. And I think he was able to meet people where they were and connect with them on that more personal level than other people we see in the political sphere.
You all have different experiences on your campuses, but the through line is something that the dominant media doesn't cover with any depth, which is the ostracization of conservatives on most campuses and the degree to which you had to hide your views and still to some extent do. So I'd love for you guys to discuss examples of what it's like to be a conservative on most college campuses and how Charlie Kirk and Turning Point made living your lives different possible.
1000%. So, sorry, you go ahead, Theo.
Okay. Well, when I was at West Virginia, that's where I started at. West Virginia stayed largely apolitical. It wasn't too bad there. I came back to the University of Kansas, which everyone thinks of Kansas as a conservative state. The University of Kansas is very far from that. So I get back to school and, all the classes are pushed around this just Marxist rhetoric about critical theory, all that type of stuff that is not factual. It is based solely on feeling and not how the world actually works. And they push this to all the students. And if you're the one that stands up to that and says, hey, this isn't right, this is not how the world works, this is not what we should be pushing to people, that gets you labeled really quickly as the person that is just hateful towards other groups and you don't want the best for other groups. And it's far from that. And that quickly became apparent through 2 required history classes that I had at the university. Quickly became apparent that my beliefs.
Theo, does that come from other students, from faculty? Where does it come from? Is it explicit or just a feeling?
It's both. So it's explicit from the faculty. One direct statement that was made in one of my classes was that we were discussing the Israel-Palestine conflict in the class, and of course the teacher siding with Palestine and has to come back and make his statement on why he's not an anti-Semite because of that. So he decides that it makes sense to point out that, who's actually anti-Semites? It's the Christians. And then he goes on to say that the Bible advocates for another Holocaust of the Jews, which is nowhere in the Bible. We all know that. And so these kids go along with it, and the kids, they have no critical thinking. They come back and they're like a parrot of what this professor tells them because they went and studied this in school, and they studied it at the same school doing the same brainwashing. And so it's just a continuation of that. And, these students, I challenged a narrative of a teacher about Guantanamo Bay. We were discussing that, and I challenged a narrative that didn't make sense. And they were like, well, you're just justifying the torturing of humans. And I was like, no, I'm not trying to justify torturing people by any means. But then it kept going on, and one student's like, well, anyone that thinks that should be lined up and shot. Yeah. And it's
sorry, Emma,
that's just what happens.
You felt, as you said before, the criticism and the pressure at high school, where rather than being proud of their most famous graduate, I suspect he's the most famous, maybe not. Absolutely. People were critical. What are things you've experienced where the pressure to be conform has been negative towards you?
Yeah, well, I'll say high school wasn't kind. And that's part of the reason I left Chicago and now I'm in the beautiful state of Tennessee, where we do tend to have more conservative leaning students as part of our campus. But I think a lot of people at the University of Tennessee are generally apathetic towards politics. However, I do believe there is a shift happening now. Of course, with the death of Charlie, a lot of people have been ready to step up and stand out and say, "Well, I am conservative. I've been conservative, and now it's time for me to get involved and really make that part of my life and part of my mission." But referring back to high school, I was absolutely slandered by both high school teachers and students, of course. And I looked to Charlie as an example. I said, okay, well, he definitely experienced this and he still does experience this. And if he's capable of overcoming that negativity and that slander, I think I could absolutely as well.
What kind of things were said to you?
Social media accounts with my face on it were made, hate accounts, you would call them. I was approached in person by students who had the guts to do that, but a lot of the comments were online on my social media where I had become public about my views and what I was doing. And in reality, that's just cyberbullying, I guess you could call it, but it doesn't have any weight.
What kind of things did they say about you?
I think there were some death threats. There were just some negative comments about, you're going to hell, and all of these, other negative things. But I thankfully haven't gotten a lot of that in a long time. I think my following on social media has been pretty understanding of where I align with my politics. So, yeah, on campus here at UT, we do sometimes get the occasional person to our table who goes out of their way to make a nasty comment or two. And we actually held a vigil just a couple weeks ago outside where there were some individuals who wanted to cause some noise, and they do, but it doesn't affect us like they think it does.
How does the existence of Turning Point and the ability to be surrounded by like-minded people, how does that help you stand up to be able to express your views proudly on campus? All of you, just anybody jump in.
Yeah, so the existence of Turning Point essentially gives us, I would say it gives us strength. It gives us a base point to jump off of. If we're just a young conservatives group, all we really have is our word against theirs. But when we have such a strong national organization with thousands of chapters being started and requested, you see that there's kind of support there for a reason. And when you have a voice like Charlie speaking out and being so confident and taking that level of hate and death threats for him and his family, his daughter and his wife receiving death threats daily, the strength that takes is so powerful in itself that it thus gives these thousands of college students and high school students the strength to be able to stand up for what they believe in as well. If they see Charlie taking all of that, then they're thinking, oh, I can do this. I got this. And to attest to what Emma was saying as well, I've been getting the exact same kind of hate on my campus here as well. I just started this chapter, and I've already been receiving the most heinous comments I've ever received in my life via the comment section of our Instagram page. I'm just going to read you one of them. This is basically the KKK. What's up with the Millersville Nazi Club? Kill yourself. So that kind of thing is, for one, not tolerable in America. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And two, it is not very, very a good showing of the tolerant left. And I welcome these type of comments because they just affirm everything we're fighting for, and they're proving our point. So
yeah. I want to go through and talk about how you've experienced the time since Charlie was assassinated. Emma, start with you. Just tell us about the day itself, how you learned what had happened, how you followed the news developments from the time it was learned he was shot till the time it was made clear he had passed away. How did you experience that day from a news point of view, but also from an emotional point of view?
Yes, so I was actually at home and I was preparing for our Turning Point meeting. We were having a 9/11 memorial just a couple hours later. And I had gotten a message on my phone and I wasn't sure exactly what it meant at first. Charlie Kirk got shot. And I said, okay, well, let's see. So I went online and I Googled Charlie Kirk shot. Nothing came up. So I assume I was one of the first people to hear about it before the media had gotten their hands on that news. So went into my living room and grabbed my roommate, and we started doing our research through X or Twitter. And it just kind of unfolded. It seemed like the longest, maybe it was 3 hours, I think, between the time that we had found out and the time that we had realized that he had passed. It felt like 10 hours. But it was very emotional. I was really glad to be with somebody at home because I have been an avid follower of Charlie and Turning Point for 4.5 years now. I've met Charlie, I've had conversations with Charlie, and all of my friends in my community are associated closely with Charlie or with Turning Point. And I know it really hit close to home for a lot of them, and therefore it hit close to home for me. So it was horrible. It was something that I didn't believe at first. I think we're all still pretty much processing what happened. And it was so heavy on all of our hearts. We had to cancel our meeting, of course, but just, we stated a message and saying, take care of yourselves, because this is going to be a hard time for all of us to overcome.
Theo, how did you experience that horrible day?
Yeah, so I was sitting in this chair right here. I work from home. I was on work. One of my buddies goes, "Oh my goodness, Charlie was just shot." And my initial thought was like the Trump incident. Like, you can't kill Trump, you can't kill Charlie. Like those are our icons. Like, those are people that have been iconic in this pro-American movement right now and keeping our country as America, being proud to be American. And so that's what I'm thinking. And I get sent the video and I'm watching it. I'm faced over this way and I'm heads down watching the video. And I just see him get shot and just instantly knew and just dropped my phone. And I was like, oh my goodness. And it was surreal. It's still, doesn't really sit in. We still see videos of him all over Instagram and stuff. And so part of it doesn't feel real, but it was just such an iconic figure that you look to as leading this revolution, leading this pro-America push that was inspiring a generation. And they kind of just become this immortal figure in your head, and seeing that something like that could happen to someone like Charlie. And then just the fact of such a great human being that people would go out and target him because they have political differences. And it was a surreal feeling of, wow, like all the hate we had seen coming from the media on the left, like this hit all, this was the tipping point of what this actually leads to. And just seeing that happen to someone like Charlie was, like I said, just surreal, very hard to comprehend. And it kind of flipped our world upside down. It's been great to see the people that have gotten inspired by Charlie, but at the same time, Charlie was the one leading this movement. And it's, when you lose a leader like that, it was extremely hard and felt like I had really lost a friend, not just someone I looked to, but really felt like someone close to me I had just lost. And that was hard.
Sidonia, you talked before about the moment when you found out. As you've thought about it, I'm sure you have, between when it happened and today, what kinds of things do you think about when you think about the assassination of Charlie Kirk?
I think about cowardice and I think about evil. I want to be very clear that this country no longer has an issue between right and left. It has an issue between good and evil. And I think the person that did this to Charlie was evil, and there's no question about it. The minute I heard my boyfriend, he's actually a Marine in the United States Marines. The minute I heard him say that Charlie Kirk was shot, I got very emotional. And I just thought of Jesus. I thought, Jesus, please save this country. Please save Erica. Please save his little girls. I was absolutely appalled. And going forward from that moment, I have actually become a lot closer in my relationship with Jesus, because you never know when it's going to be a loved one of yours. He thought he was going to walk off that campus with Erica that day, and he didn't. So you hug your loved ones tight is what I've been thinking actually a lot. You never know what is going to happen to you. And again, like I said, this country no longer has a partisan problem. It has a humanitarian problem.
Hey, everybody, if you're 64 years old or older, this is an important announcement. The Department of Justice recently sued 3 major Medicare brokers for claiming they were unbiased while allegedly pushing people into plans that got them the biggest kickbacks. It's true, so many insurance agents, they just can't be trusted. but you can't necessarily rely on government resources either. So what to do? Well, I want you to know about Chapter. Chapter was started by people who went through this exact thing personally after their own parents were pushed into the wrong Medicare plan by an agent who was more focused on commissions than on good care. Chapter's mission is very simple: give every American the honest, straightforward Medicare advice they deserve. And here's what's different about them. They're the only Medicare advisor that compares every plan nationwide, not just a handful. That saves their clients, get this, an average of $1,100 every year. There's no reason not to call. It's quick, it's easy, and they can review your options in under 20 minutes. If you're already in the right plan, they'll let you know that. But if they see a better plan, they'll help you make the switch. This could be the most important call you make this year. Dial right now, pound 250, and say Chapter Medicare to get that peace of mind. Again, that's pound 250 and say Chapter Medicare.